Peace. I want today to talk about the tools in my toolbox. This is a term familiar to some of you. I believe the term originated with the Moore Science Temple. I know that's the first time I've heard it. The first time I've heard the term was at a Moore Science Temple meeting, maybe 20 years ago or something like that. What it basically means is once you have learned um, some information, you add that information to your toolbox and you go and you learn something else and you add that to your toolbox. And then you go and you learn something else and you add that to your toolbox. Now, when there comes a time, and a time will come, where you have to go in that toolbox, if you're learning for the right reasons, you have to go into that toolbox. And once you go into that toolbox, you have to pull out the right tool for that particular situation. Now, since we're talking about building human beings, you have to go into that toolbox and produce the right literature, for one. I'm going to give you an example. The Bible is a poisonous book. More damage has been done over the planet, and particularly to black people, with a Bible than any other book. Period. This is a fact. It was a verse in the Bible that the Pope offered up in the 16th century, I believe it was, to justify and continue the slave trade of black people. That was a verse dealing with a curse Noah put on his son Ham, that him and his descendants would be hewers of wood. In other words, they'll be slaves of another people. So the European justified their evils towards black people using the quote unquote word of God, a poison book. But the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad built the nation primarily using that poison book. For those of you who study the theology of the Nation of Islam, you'll find most of the information um, and reference points to be linked back to the Bible, more so than the Holy Quran. It's a reason for that. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad was not sent to a people who knew a Bible, a Quran, for an example. He was sent to a people who didn't necessarily know the Bible, but they certainly had one, two, three, or four copies. So he was given information relating to the Bible, information that he could later use from the Bible to pull them out of that condition that we were placed in, a condition of inferiority, a condition of self-hate. He used that Bible to raise a nation of former prostitutes, drug addicts, criminals, drug users, murderers, thieves. He took those people using that poison book, but taking scriptures from that poison book in its proper doses and giving it to a sick people and healing a sick people using a poisonous book. Ponder that. He's a master teacher. And when you become a master, you can do that. He didn't lose himself in that book. And as the student began to grow, he took the student away from that book and he put them on another course. So I and others are attempting to follow in his example, using what we know to raise our people, but meeting our people where they are. You can't go to our people that are in the Bible speaking the Quran. You can be successful to some degree, but not as successful. Most of our people will reject that immediately. You can't go to them speaking of lost books, lost scrolls, and Dead Sea Scrolls and books of that nature. They're not trying to hear that. You have to go to them with what they're familiar with and raise them where you find them. You find them in the Bible, then you work from that Bible. That's your tool. You have studied that Bible well enough to know how to use it to take a man out the mud or take a woman out the mud if you have indeed studied it. Once you get them out the mud, you can stand them up and dust them off, and you can put them on another course at that time. Or you let them choose the direction that they wish to go in. Because once they have a certain knowledge, they're no longer your responsibility. You have done your job. So, this is the meaning of the tools in one's toolbox. The proper use of what we learn, how to use it to raise our people and set them back on their square. And I'm going to teach on that square a little later. Peace.